friend, Brick Board member, and a LAUSD teacher that has won an insane amount of grant funding. So he is here to share with you all of his secrets. Thanks, Matt. Oh, you're muted. Number one sentence.
Oh, you know what? I've never done this before, so thank you. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, everybody, for being here for this Grant Writing 101 session. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here. Let's get started. So again, my name is Matthew Waney, and just a little bit about myself before we get into it. So I've been teaching for over 20 years. I started off doing Teach for America in rural Texas, where I did English for the high school level, and I asked to help out their drama department. And they're like, we don't have one. Could you build one from the ground up? So that was fun and exciting. The kids were literally making costumes, making set pieces, and all of that. After about 3 years there, I moved to Los Angeles. I got a master's in screenwriting, worked in the industry for a number of years, continued to teach screenwriting, and I've been teaching film and animation full-time for the last 8 years now. When I started at the school that I'm at now, USC Magnet, our students are mostly Title I students, so they come from low income households for the most part. Probably 80% of our students are Latino and about 12% are African American. And when I started there, they didn't have a film program. They're like, we'd like to build them from the ground up. And I was like, well, I've had some experience doing that, of just how to move forward from there. So, but over the years, I've written over $1 million in grants. We've really kind of fleshed out our department fully, and I'll talk about that today. And I was honored to be recognized as the National Magnet Teacher of the Year a couple of years ago. There are my social media handles if you want to check into that throughout this. I often drop in grant information, opportunities, stuff with industry people as well from there. So, all right, let's get started. And before I get into that, let me drop this into the my chat box appeared. I just want to get a quick survey from you to see, how many people here are teachers, how many people are for nonprofits. Have you had any experience writing grants or not? Just kind of let me adjust my presentation today a little bit, and while you're doing that, just talk a little bit about what we'll be going over. So again, just starting off, what kind of got me started with writing grants. Some of the pieces that I do, a success story that I've had, some of the resources that are out there, as well as sort of getting you launched on your first steps. So again, if you get a chance to click into that survey, let's see, we got at this point, it's pretty early. We got a lot of people. This is their first or limited experience writing grants. So this is the place to be for that. So great. Thank you for all of that. All right, so what kind of got me started? Again, when I started teaching at my current school, my school is a SPAN school, so we're a K through 12 campus. I teach high school classes specifically, but we also have eventually moved this down to our middle school. We're trying to start getting film and animation into our elementary classes as well. But when I started off, again, they're like, we hired you as a film teacher. Can you go from there? I was like, what do you got? And they're like, well, we've got these 8 point and shoot cameras. We got a class that's not really called filmmaking, but we're going to make it a faux filmmaking class for you to start off with, and stuff like that. And again, my school is literally across the street from USC, which obviously has a very successful film school. And I was in the creative writing program at USC, so not in the film school directly, but my principal was like, can you just go over there and get us a partnership with them? And I was like, well, let's be a little bit more let's get some equipment. Let's look like we're being serious about this. So, and that was kind of when I went into let's start writing some grants and going from there. So since then, again, we now have DSL cameras there. We've got high-grade tripods, editing software, obviously professional mics, light kits. We actually renovated an extra room that wasn't being used on our campus into our studio space for a while. Literally, it was like my classroom was the editing lab. It was where all our equipment was stored. It was where we'd film. It was our classroom. It was our screening room. And it was, with 30 kids in there at a time, it definitely was a cozy experience along that. And then a couple of years ago, we also soundproofed our studio. Now, obviously, this is all back before COVID. So a lot of the stuff has just been sitting there for the last year or so. My district has not gone back at all. So now we're improvising along how to do these things remotely along the way. So but that was kind of what got me started, got me thinking about it. And again, I had never written a grant before. I've obviously written things. I was an English major. I was done some screenwriting. And I think a lot of those skills were definitely helpful for me. But I've worked with teachers before who, don't have the same English background, don't feel as comfortable writing, and really breaking the grant down into pieces has really made it much easier for them to be able to succeed in getting their grants done. So, all right. Normally this would be a much more interactive session, but I know we have 40 minutes, so I do want to keep it, keep us moving through the content. But maybe about 30 seconds. Again, maybe you've already thought about it. Like, what is one project that you would like to get funded? What is something that you want to bring into your classroom? Maybe you're a nonprofit and you're looking to do a project. What is one thing that you would really like to do? And again, you can write it down. You can just think about it. Normally I'd have people to share their ideas, but we will keep it kind of focused today of just kind of getting through the content. And we definitely have questions. If you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A link there. I'll get to those throughout. All right, so as you've thought that through and just sort of thinking about the larger concepts of stuff that I tell people, I've just really, if you haven't already, I know we live in a social media world where everything is being photographed, everything's videotaped and stuff like that. But I find a lot of teachers especially, I mean, you're busy doing your lesson plans, doing your grading, running the in-class stuff, calling up parents, contacting parents on top of just your normal life. And so sometimes you forget it's important just to document all of your achievements, big or small. If you're doing a project in your class, get some pictures of it. If you're going on a field trip, get some pictures of it. Even if you're not sure how that's going to be relevant later on, I just started early, when if we had a guest speaker, I was taking a picture of it. If my former students were coming back and talking to my students, I would take pictures of it, because you never know that evidence is going to be helpful for you when you're applying for grants, because places, most of these grants are very competitive. And even if you got the best well-written proposal, just seeing those visuals, just seeing your students doing things, just seeing your nonprofit program out there in the community doing things can make a big difference. The phrase out there, picture's worth 1,000 words, that there is obviously truth to that. So start documenting all of your stuff. When you think about a grant, you want to make sure it's more than just about your classroom, more than just about your thing. How can you make it about the community? How can you make it have a larger impact beyond just what's in the classroom? And that's not to say what we're doing in the classroom is not important. But again, when people are looking to donate money to give grants, they're kind of looking for the bang for their buck as well. And if it's going to help one classroom versus 500 people in a community, that same amount of money is not always, but sometimes going to be given to those that have sort of a larger reach, stuff like that. And sort of tying that, tie it into community issues. And almost every year I will tie my grant proposals into a community issue that my students are going to be a part of. They're going to make films about, they're going to make animated pieces about. I've also taught previously, I've taught photography, I've done documentary filmmaking. So depending on the classes, we will fit in different things happening in the community. And it's not always driven by me. Most of the times as students, like, what's important to you? What's going on in your life? What do we need more of? What kind of issues do we need less of? And sort of really build it around that. So again, building your classroom, your nonprofit around a larger thing. And obviously nonprofits, a lot of times nonprofits, even in your theme, the reason you came together was because of a specific issue. So that, that work in a way is already done for a lot of nonprofits. Technology. And again, I've talked to different teachers, elementary teachers. Oh, I just want to get some colored pencils and some paper and stuff like that. And while that is a fantastic and awesome request from grants, again, people who are giving grants, again, they want it to be sexy. They want it to be a good story for them. And while, I've had, English teachers, I'd like to get a, class set of books and things like that. It was like, that's great. Could you also maybe get some iPads to film so the students could actually do like narratives based on that film and do their own interpretations of it? So now, again, we're moving into 21st century skills, which are obviously so essential for our kids, students, specifically to get those experiences, get those skills to be able to move that, getting into college, getting into their careers. So even if you're focused on something that might not be as tech heavy, what way can you bring in some technology? And again, usually that's the more expensive stuff. And that's great, especially as a public school teacher myself. I'm limited to very, very small amounts from my school. And that was why, teaching film and animation, the equipment alone is so expensive. And oftentimes every 3 to 5 years, you need to upgrade it or it's completely obsolete. So integrating technology into your request can definitely be helpful as well. And again, that doesn't mean, I had an idea about this, just expand it. What other way can technology be a part of it? Get some audio recorders and actually go out and, I've had my students use them to record people when they're doing interviews, stuff like All right, and finally, tell an amazing story about your students, about your program. Maybe you're a brand new program, maybe you're new to the teaching. But again, we always have those students who have an effect, who have had challenges, were underdogs in some way, and they sort of rose to the occasion, and they're able to make great achievements. It doesn't have to be related to what your grant is about, but just showing like, this is the changes that are happening in my classroom, happening with my nonprofit. These are things that I want to share to them. Just like, back to the thing of applying to college, all those applications are just words and words and numbers. Like, what is going to make it stand out? What is going to make it personal? What is going to make it really connect with the people who, again, sometimes they're reading dozens, if not hundreds of applications for a limited number of funding there. So, all right, so again, I'll give you about 30 seconds. So just think about what types of things from the community and technology might you be able to add into that first idea you had moments ago. And again, you can jot it down, just think about it. And again, this is as we continue to layer and sort of think about that project itself. It's that project that really is going to sell your grant more than anything else. All right. I know that wasn't a full 2 minutes, but while you're thinking about it, I'll keep moving on. So some of the nuts and bolts, and I've done these, I've probably done this 12 different times at different areas, from elementary teachers, high school teachers, and stuff like that, nonprofits. And ultimately, people are like, do you have a perfect example of a grant that I could just have and use that as my model? And I wish it was that easy. If it was that easy, we would all be like, tripping over ourselves with all the money we'd be getting from grants. And grants are just, it's really on a case-by-case basis. I mean, I've done grants that literally were 2 paragraphs long. They just wanted some very basics, and again, those tend to be for a little bit less money, $250, $500. But, at some point, you got to start somewhere. And I've done other grants that have, been anywhere from 90 to 120 pages. So, there really isn't like one grant out there that can really fit the needs of what is required from your specific organization that's providing that, or foundation. So, but I find generally what you definitely need, what is the history of your school or program? What, when was it founded? What is the elements that have brought it about? What have been the changes over the years or decades? Or maybe you guys are just months into it, and that's fine too, but then you want to talk about that. What is your targeted population? Obviously, if you're a teacher, I would talk about how most of my students are Title I students. Most of them are coming from underrepresented populations in the film and in animation industry, stuff like that. If you are a nonprofit, you are probably focused on, maybe it's not a certain population of students, but maybe it's a specific theme, maybe it's a specific issue that you're focused on. What is your project's needs and justifications? And this is where it's that fine line. You definitely need to be specific. You can't just go, I need stuff. Can you give me some cameras? I'll figure out what to do with them. Again, they want to make sure that their money is being spent wisely, that it's going to be effective, and that there's going to actually be impact, that there's going to be results to it in the end. So this really, and what I often do, I will write and write and write, and I'm like, I got too much stuff here, but I'd rather get it all down on that piece of paper into that doc, and then go back and hone it down. But again, what is your needs? And a lot of that goes back to the problem you're trying to address for this specific grant. And then what are the justifications? Why do you need this? Oh, you're an English teacher and you asked me for books and now you threw in a couple iPads. Why? And that doesn't mean don't ask for the iPads. That just means think about it, make sure you have a very concrete reason for needing that. What are the benefits to the donor? I mean, free money is never free. We know that. So obviously they are doing this for PR. They are doing this for, I'm sure, very sincere and very legitimate reasons to help out communities and schools and nonprofits. But they're also, again, looking to get some type of return on that. So I've had grants where, they helped us get cameras. And so at that whole year, we put their name at the end. Thanks to the grant by so-and-so, we were able to get equipment to make this film. We've got put in before, we'll have a placard up in our school just announcing how we got this grant support from you. Again, different ways to do it. Being invited to sometimes, can you come to one of our events to just talk about what you've been doing and stuff like that? And like, yeah, I'd love to share what we're doing. And obviously that's getting benefit for them too. Community impact, and I've kind of mentioned that, layered that throughout this whole thing, but community impact is obviously very important to that. So, and then your legacy. Again, you might be a brand new to teaching, you might be a brand new nonprofit, and maybe you don't have that legacy yet, but this is, again, goes back to taking those pictures, accounting for everything that you've done. This right here is the UCLA sponsored an environmental film festival for a couple of years, and they offered prizes. And the first year that my students applied to that, we applied, I think, 6 different films, and 4 of them were selected. And my students walked away with $2,250 in prize money in their pockets. A couple of them got a free tour of Paramount Studios. And again, it was just an amazing thing. Parents were there. It was just a great thing. And I've written about that in future, after that happened, I wrote about it in future grants, and obviously keeping that legacy to show, we've done these things with my students. We've done these things with my nonprofit. And you're just showing that you're a success in that, we're more willing to give money to organizations like that because we know, again, our money is going to be well spent. It's going to be delivered upon. And again, that's, we're brand new to this. I'm brand new teaching. I'm brand new at this nonprofit. You got to start somewhere. So, even if it's a small success here and there, that's why you start, taking pictures, archiving that stuff. So you've got that referenced for later. So, all right. And then this is, again, some of them will ask for these types of things. Some of them won't. And this is where, again, I've done the 120-page things. They wanted the breakdown of my demographics. They wanted a tax exemption number. What outside funding did you have? Again, I work for LAUSD, which is the 2nd largest school district in the entire nation. They're like, can you give us all the funding for that? I was like, I don't think my district is going to give me funding for, its 660,000 students. So again, then there's just open communication. What can I give you instead? They want breakdowns, letters of support sometimes. And this, again, goes back to, can you give me a perfect example of a grant? No, we can't, because all these things, I'm not sharing my screen. Uh-oh. All right, let me try this again. Is that better, Nicole? Or no?
Hit the share button in the middle.
All right, let me try that again. Has that been for a while, or did that just start?
Yeah, I just realized you were referencing it just now because it was fine until then.
Okay. All right. As I tell my films and animation students, there's always tech issues. Just make sure you're ready to solve the problem and move on. How about that?
There we go. Perfect.
Great. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So yeah, just having stuff like that. Your mission statement. So we're going back to different pieces that you tend to need. And if you're a teacher, most likely your district or your school already has a mission statement. A lot of these things you might already have. And again, if you are a nonprofit, chances are you have a mission statement or a vision statement that you could use as your basis. And maybe you tweak it a little bit depending upon the grant that you are working on. But that is something that you can use as well and often need for your grants. All right, just normally I would have you spend some time working on. This is the one I often use for my grants. The mission of the CTE Animation and Video Production Pathways at USC May is to train a new generation of teenage filmmakers, 6th through 12th grade, from low socioeconomic neighborhoods in the Los Angeles area, so that these students can gain an intensive, hands-on, problem-solving education that focuses on video production, animation, advertising, audio design, music technology, and digital media, which will ultimately lead to them getting jobs in the film industry. Probably need a drink of water after that one. That is one sentence. And they do ask usually for one sentence mission statements, but if you get into 2 sentences, that's okay. But again, it's another thing where I write it extra long and then we'll hone it down and tweak it as needed along the way with that. So, okay. Normally, again, I would have you spend some time working on that. But I do want to keep moving forward. So, all right, I'm going to skip over this next part, and it's really kind of, I'll come back to this, just some of the basic things, your executive summary. I've seen just about, if it requires any amount of writing to it, they only want this, what's the problem, the solution, what your requirements are, and your organization. Your second page will just be your statement of need. And just putting a human face on it. And I will share a link later on if you want to, contact me. I can send you the links to the resources I'm going to share with you later on and stuff like that. But this is a story for me back when I was teaching in rural Texas about a student who came in all the time and just really, was looking for some help for that. And this was a story that I would include in a lot of my first grants because, again, I didn't have a lot of other stuff for that. Actually, this is 1 minute. I'm going to share this right now, and then we'll keep going on. So again, this is something I would share in a lot of my earlier grants. I realized pretty early that I really enjoyed being a teacher, that it was really more than just a job for me. I started off teaching in rural Texas. I was a member of Teach for America. So I taught in a small little rural border town. And one student specifically, Luis, he came from a migrant family, very shy and reserved. Was really struggling to learn English and speak better. But he was really dedicated. He was in my classroom at lunchtime and after school almost every day. At first just asking about homework, and then really started opening up, just curious about what it took to go to college, what it took to do certain jobs, what should he be studying. And by the end of my third year, I taught down there for 3 years. I taught drama as well. He was trying out for roles, and just small roles, but still trying out. It was just such an amazing transition to see him do. I went back that fourth year that he graduated just to see, and he was the first of his family to graduate. And I moved to Los Angeles, and 4 or 5 years after that, I received a package. And it was this large frame of his college gown and stole that he sent to me, and basically said, Mr. Waney, without you, without those conversations and your support, I never would have graduated. So, it's just moments like that that, it's more than a job. Okay. All right. And again, and that is obviously something that, if you're a teacher, if you're an educator, we all have student moments like that. If, again, a student struggling, a student succeeding. And those are the things that really make your grant stand out, because there is a personal element to it. There are these students you're affecting. And again, that's where if you've got student work you can hand in, and even if you're not a video instructor or stuff like that, if you've got images of your students or writing of that, and obviously, I don't include the last names of students and stuff like that, or names at all, and sometimes, but just to be able to show that stuff can really have an effect on that. So, all right. So again, I would normally give you some time to work on that, but think about that from your own. And again, if you're a nonprofit, same thing. What types of families are you affecting? What type of impact are you having on, teenagers, elementary students, whatever age group you're working with from there. So, all right. I want to tell you about what ended up being one of my first sort of was my first large sort of success as a grant writer. And this is what basically my proposal ended up being. And it was more than a proposal. It really was a story. So, the question I asked heading into that school year before I applied for these grants, how can we create positive career change for my students? Again, a lot of my students didn't know what jobs were like in the animation field or what they were like in the film industry and stuff like that. And even if they weren't going to go into that, how can we engage our community and help train students for jobs across any facet? So that was kind of what I wanted to do. So I had 3 of my classes that year make socially conscious documentaries that were highlighting existing nonprofits in our neighborhoods that a lot of my students were already using or might not even be familiar about. And when it started off, I was like, you know what I want? I just want 8 inexpensive cameras, because the cameras I had, they couldn't leave our campus. So a student could only shoot their films on campus. And while that's great training, most filmmakers, you need to get out in the real world. You need to interview people beyond just students and peers and stuff like that. So I'm going to ask for 8 inexpensive cameras. And so here's how we started. I started reaching out to parents in communities. And again, this is how I proposed it to the grant, the people who are offering the grants. We were including our community and our parents and talking about what is it that's out there that our students are already doing. I talked to students. And if you're in Los Angeles, these organizations exist. Reach out to them. Urban Text. And this is an organization that is specifically for young men of color. It teaches them how to do coding, app design, entrepreneurs. They actually come in for the summer. I think it's 6 to 8 weeks. It's all fully funded. They actually pitch their ideas to real entrepreneurs who then end up giving them $500 to $2,000 for these groups of students to create their apps. And I had a number of students doing that. So we made a documentary about that. Salvation Army. I'm familiar with Salvation Army, but I didn't know back at the time. They actually have a lot of sort of like boys and girls clubs at some of their locations across, at least in Los Angeles, I assume across the country as well, known as Red Shield centers. So a lot of my students would go there after school. They would help train other students as well. 24th Street Theater, same type of stuff. We had students, and 3 of my students are right here. They are part of the LAPD cadet program. So we made a documentary about that. as well as the LA Fire Department. It makes sense that there'd be fire department cadets, but I had no idea. The student's like, Mr. Waney, can I do it on this program? I was like, I didn't know about this program. He's like, yeah, I'm involved in it. And every weekend, that's my student right there. We get, you know, dressed up, we get geared up, we go out, and obviously they're not fighting fires, but they're getting trained for a career like that. So we went through, and again, I'll send you the link to this so you can actually watch one of these student videos that were made. And so that was one part. We were going to make these documentaries. Then I spent also part of my my proposal talking about the goals of documentary filmmaking. Obviously, it makes students, they have to collaborate and communicate, work together with their classmates. They're developing interview skills, where again, even if you're not going into film, how often do we have to either be on the interviewing side or being interviewed for that? People were learning how to do editing. And obviously, students were learning basic industry skills to be able to do this type of stuff, which again, they could then put on their resume, even if they were going into film school. And I tell our students all the time, like, media is everywhere now. If you want to become a doctor or a lawyer or a chef, like, how many people out there have their social media? They're doing videos, they're doing photography. And even if you're not taking that content, you're at least able to understand how and what you need. And ultimately, my students were becoming better community citizens. All right, so again, right there, all the skills my students were going to learn, the end project of these films. And again, I was feeling pretty good about it. Feels like it's got some strong project base to it. It's interacting with the community. Students are finding things in the community. But I wanted to push it one more step beyond that. And what we also included into that proposal for that grant, a community film festival. Okay. So again, in Los Angeles, we asked around, and we got the Independent Theater downtown donated their space to us on a Sunday afternoon. It sat 210 seats, I believe. We had a sold out standing room only event that afternoon. We had some of our classes who were making promotions. I did, again, ad design class back then. So that class was making pamphlets for it. So again, another class being used. So I could say, you know, I'm literally 250 students are working with this funding coming in. We did pep rallies to promote it, classroom visits to talk about these opportunities. Oh, there are these organizations out there that you could be a part of. We actually created a website that is still out there. I could share that with you that our students created to help promote this. And they were doing some social media promotions as well throughout that. And the best part, during that afternoon, we screened 6 films, and out of those 6 organizations, 4 of them were there, and they set up shop in the lobby. And so now parents were like, oh, I've heard about you. I want to sign my son or daughter up to be a part of your program this summer, or I've never heard about you. Why don't you guys tell me what it is? And so again, now we had this community interaction happening between nonprofits in our community, parents and students, finding out what was there, what was available to them. Oh, I might only have an 8th grader now, but when he or she gets to be a 10th grade, I'm going to definitely look out for you. So it was really this great interaction, this great community, bonding happening. And this didn't happen before I knew the grant, but we actually got picked up by UpRocks, which is an online news organization, and they did a film about this. And again, I would normally share that, but I'll show that, but I'll share that with you later on. So again, since then, I use this video often to show what we've done with some of our grants. So again, I wrote up that grant proposal, and I sent it out to, I think, 6 different places. And just again, I wanted 8 simple cameras I could take off campus. But we ended up bringing in $30,500 to sponsor all of that. So I think that was across 3 or 4 different organizations, and just had that success. And again, it was really great to see when you build the story, when you build something that has impact, that can have meaning, people get excited about it and people are willing to fund that. So, all right, let me wrap up here, and then I'd like to have some time for questions for that. So number 1, don't be scared. Again, I look here, we got 83% of you have limited or no experience doing during grant writing. Don't be afraid of it. If you break it down into these doable little sections, it just makes it a lot easier to do. And hopefully, you won't be doing this on your own. Hopefully you've got a team, you've got other teachers, you've got admin if you're a teacher, or you're a nonprofit. You can break that apart across different people doing different parts. Parts of it, like I said, are already written for you. Your history of your program, especially if your school, already exists probably on your school's website. Nonprofits, you probably already have that. If you're, again, in your beginning stages of being a nonprofit, you're going to need some of those pieces anyway. So now you're doing it to put on your website and also to use for a grant. The nice thing, again, that first time is always the hardest, but once you're done, your history probably isn't going to change too much. Your mission statement probably isn't going to change too much. Once you've done it the first time, the second, the third time, it gets easier. Like now I have to go in and I have to rework the project I'm going to do each year, but a lot of the other stuff ends up being used year after year because those things aren't changing as frequently. Now, again, if you've got a grant writer on your department in your school, that is their job and they can do a lot of different grants. I have limited myself to writing one grant each year, and basically it revolves around one project. And then I go out and I look. And it's important to set yourself up for success, to make sure that what you're asking for is something that will actually be supported by the organization that you are sending it to. The worst thing to do is to spend all that time and work and send it to an organization like, we don't really support high school age students, or we don't really support film and technology, or whatever it is. Just make sure you're doing your research. But again, send that out. If you've worked in the, you don't have to send it out. Oh, I can only send it out to one organization at a time. No, send it out to 4 or 5, 6 if you can, and just to see if multiple places will be excited about it. All right, and a few things. And again, I know people here from all across the country, all across the state of California. The California Credit Union, at least in Los Angeles, does 20 grants for $500 twice a year. Again, California Credit Union obviously spans California. I don't know if that's a regional thing or if they do that in all areas. So to check that out, that's something that we've applied to, and we won that one year. Check for unexpected places. I'm sure everybody's heard of Kinder Morgan, the film and animation company. Oh, no, that's right. They do gas and electricity. But I was just doing some research, and they actually, if your organization is within 30 miles of one of their facilities and you're doing an art project, either nonprofit or school, they have anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 grants that are available. So check those out. Again, would I even think about checking them out? No, but I was just doing a general search and ended up finding them for that. And then last but not least, obviously grant funding is more than just funding. 2 years ago, the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History, again, I'm not a history teacher, but I found it, I saw those out there, and I then partnered up with my history department. It's like, hey, let's work together and do this. And on 2017, I think, or maybe it was 2018, we ended up taking 90 of our juniors to go see a free matinee of Hamilton. Our kids had to do performance. They had to create their own performance-based projects based on Hamilton, and one of our students got up onto the Pantages stage in Los Angeles, which held 2,700 people in the seats, and they got to perform for that. We actually were going to do that again last year, but COVID closures stopped that. But again, it isn't only just about funding either. There are great field trips and opportunities beyond funding. So, all right. So today we've talked about photographing everything you do, brainstorming a project, integrating community technology, mission statements, and including a powerful story with that. So again, you should spend this time while you're not on your Zooms for 8 hours a day, trying to work on some of those. Obviously, those are some examples or something else that you might have found, and then finally get that approval. And the last word here, I'd say, and back, I did a lot of scholarships when I was in college. I basically put myself through college, so I did a lot. And I used to tell myself, if you never write a grant, if you never write a scholarship, the best you can do is earn $0. But if you finish something, send it off. The best you can do is $0 for that. The worst you can do is 0. And so since then, I've had some success bringing in over $1 million, and you can too. Again, don't expect to be getting $1 million off your first one. Start off with 500 to 1,000, something smaller, and you can go from there. All right, any questions? That's a lot of talking by me, but we got about 6-7 minutes here. Nicole, any questions in the chat?
Yes. Mariah would like to know, what is the best way to apply grant writing to writing proposals for personal creative projects?
I would think the same type of approach would go, and obviously the impact is going to be to you as the individual filmmaker. But what type of story are you doing? I mean, if you're doing a documentary that is going to have true impact out there, included. If it's a narrative, tell about that story. I mean, obviously what that story is, what your film project is going to be influential to them. But I would definitely make sure that you're looking into the funder to make sure that that is something that they are going to support, that they do fund moving forward with that. Great question. Thank you for that.
This is a related question. Is your experience that grants are more for specific projects versus general nonprofit support? Example, as a nonprofit, would we be focused on a specific project or program versus the organization as a whole?
In general, most of these grants that I've applied for rarely ask for a project, but I feel like basing it around a project really lets it get grounded. It isn't this, oh, we want to improve skills. Well, all right, even I want to improve filmmaking skills. Well, to what end? What is the point of that? And I feel like if you can ground it in a project, then that obviously can make it more tangible to them. They could say, oh, here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end of what this project's trying to achieve. And again, most of the places I apply to are not asking for a specific project. Some of them are, but very few of them are. So I would really base it on that approach. Great question.
And that is all that I see in the Q&A. Does anybody else, we have a couple of minutes left. If you have any specific questions, I guess you called out. So, well, first of all, will this presentation be available to us after the chat?
You're asking me as far as how you guys are posting it up?
Would you share this presentation with us?
And so here's what I referred to it a few times here. So I just dropped that in chat. If you go into that, share your name, share your email with me. I will send you the link to this to the deck. I will put in there the links to the different organizations I talked about. I'll put in the links to those films that I wasn't able to show, sort of like my student example there, and some of the other stuff that was all embedded into this. So yeah, click into that. Again, share basically, tell me what worked for you today. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to help out. And they were in there to begin with, but also you can obviously contact me through social media as well. So there are those methods as well. Other questions, other thoughts?
Yeah, we just got another one. Do you think it's worth investing in a membership to sites that aggregate grant info, or is it better to just do desktop research?
I feel at this point, I've never applied to any of those. I feel like sometimes what you're getting there is no more than what you would find out there. I mean, if you've got someone, I've used this before and I really recommend it. I've never used those and just usually do it based on, searching for what we're looking to do. So yeah, if you've got the funding for it and you want to do it, it never hurts to have somebody else helping you out and bringing you resources and contacts. But I don't think it's necessary for those people who, one, don't have the extra funding, and or two, you might put the money down. And if you're a teacher, I know, am I going to be going and checking one more thing on my list of stuff to do? So not necessary.
And then just one tangent question I'd love your perspective on.
Yeah.
So obviously in pre-COVID times, BRIC would go in and out of all these different schools in LA. And it did seem that the main difference in terms of the amount of equipment they have for the arts depended upon their teachers' ability to write grants. Do you think that there's a way that more teachers could be supported in that way? So it's not just how good you are at grant writing, or is there a way that principals could support? Like, what do you think could solve this issue?
Sure. Two answers to that. I mean, one, I'm a CTE teacher, so I'm a career and technology educator. So there are a lot of grants federally and statewide for CTE teachers. So any educators in the room, if you are CTE, you have a lot more ability to get grants. At least for LA Unified, there's sort of the non-industry track of filmmaking classes, animation classes, stuff like that. Their funding is often a lot more limited. So they might be getting anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 to split across a school campus. So if there's 7 different teachers, they're sharing that amount. Versus, again, for me, there are grants for 25,000, 50,000 that I still have to work on. So again, if you're CTE, that's definitely going to be stronger for you as far as being an educator. But the other issues that some schools will have is like, a lot of times, the grants are tied to the teacher themselves. So if I were to move campuses, my equipment would then go with me, and other equipment is also bound to the school. So again, there's no easy answer to that. But yeah, it often comes down to, schools just don't have the funding for a grant writer. So even if you have a good grant writing teacher or not, like, where are you going to find the hours to put that into that type of stuff? So it is challenging, and obviously that doesn't lead to a lot of equity across funding within schools, especially a big district like Los Angeles. Sorry, I don't have an easy answer for that, but those are sort of some of the reasons and factors that lead to that type of discrepancy.
we're really missing maybe that middle support organization that could be helping these schools that don't have that access. We do have another question. Are there specific websites that you'd recommend when searching for nonprofit grants?
Unfortunately, I don't. Since I'm an educator, I haven't worked in necessarily the nonprofit realm. Again, if it is a nonprofit and education grant, I will be aware of it, but I don't usually search in that specific type of grant. So I'm sorry, I don't. But I got to believe that there's a lot of resources out there. Just doing a few Google searches will get you into some pretty good pretty good collections of that. But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have that specifically to my experience.
So, and then to add off of that, you previously had said that nonprofits, like in terms of somebody had asked about if it was project based or as an organization as a whole. We have found that on the nonprofit side, we've had a lot more luck with things that are very project specific versus Help Brick as a whole. So I don't know if that's everybody's experience, but that was ours.
Yeah, and to that, I would definitely say that, if it doesn't ask for a project, doesn't mean don't build it around a project. Because again, you can be like, we're going to have this project done, like that film festival example I showed. Like at the end, we're going to invite you to come and be a part of this. So then they're like, oh, we'll be there, we'll get our photos in, it'll be great PR for us. And again, I'm not trying to make it seem so cynical about people who are donating funding and stuff like that, but I mean that is part of their calculations as well. Here's an end result. We can send 2 of our VPs or whomever it might be, and it can be a great thing for us to then showcase as well. So, but yeah, rarely do I find that they ask for projects.
Awesome. All right, last question, and then we'll all get on with our day. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. Last question. Do you feel the demographics of your students affects the approval of your grants? For example, if you weren't working with an at-risk population, would you have been successful?
That is a great question. There are definitely, and again, this is when I'm searching for the types of grants, there are grants that are specifically for Title I schools. So, I will tend to apply for those obviously more frequently because I know that my school falls within that. So that definitely helps out. But again, there are other schools out there, there are other grants out there that might not have that be one of the requirements. But obviously, just with everything going on now with the equity issues and stuff like that and underrepresented populations, specifically to the film and animation industries, trying to get it to, students of color, students from low economic backgrounds, female identifying individuals. You will find other ones that do target to specific populations, but I do find a lot that I will apply for that specifically say Title I schools, which have lower income populations. Yeah. So, if you're a nonprofit, if those are sort of the students that you're helping or you're linked together with a school that has that type of population, that could be something where, again, then that would open up different possibilities for grant applications versus whatever your other applications that are out there. Really great questions all around. So,
well, thank you so much for your time, Matt. Always a pleasure talking with you. And
thank you, Nicole. And again, I dropped in there one last time. Please, share your emails with me through that link at the bottom, and also you reach out to me directly through Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. I'm happy to help. And again, I know it's the quick version of it, but if you got other questions along the way, don't hesitate to reach out to me. So. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the final events here at Brick. But Nicole, thank you for putting this on. It's great bringing everybody together for this.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.